Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm Mark Bergin. Duke plays Thursday night against Arizona in the Sweet 16, and the Blue Devils will play a familiar opponent. Arizona guard Caleb Love used to play at UNC. Love's 3 in the 2022 Final Four eliminated Duke from the tournament and ended Mike Krzyzewski's coaching career. If Duke wins Thursday, the Blue Devils will play either BYU or Alabama. I spoke with WRAL sports reporter Luis Fernandez about Thursday's matchup against Arizona and Duke's path to the Final Four. We're back again, another WRAL Triangle and 2, and on the WRAL Daily Download. I'm Mark Bergin. He's Luis Fernandez. March Madness rolls along, and the Duke Blue Devils heading to the Sweet 16 Thursday night against Arizona. And Luis, the Blue Devils are going up against a familiar foe.
Caleb Love, former UNC guard, transferred to Arizona a couple years back. The infamous Coach K Slayer. He made the go-ahead, dagger shot in the Final Four when UNC and Duke men's basketball faced each other. And then he played Duke next year in Cameron Indoor and won again there with the Wildcats after having a really good game. So everyone involved in the Duke program is very familiar with Caleb Love.
If somehow Arizona pulls off the upset, Caleb Love will go down as like the all-time Duke kryptonite, Lewis. It's the fact that we have this matchup is fantastic, and it really means a lot to the players given the rivalry that he had with Duke when he was at UNC. I saw in the second round how much it meant to Baylor guard Jeremy Roach, who played for 4 years at Duke. So these storylines write themselves, but the fact that we get Caleb Love to get one last crack at Duke, it's going to be fascinating to watch come Thursday night.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I feel like every year the NCAA tournament is like, the selection committee is like, we set up the brackets so that it makes the most sense from a matchup perspective, from a conference perspective, blah, 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 all these different things. And every year I look at the bracket and I'm like, no, you set up the bracket for drama. Don't mess around. On the women's side, you have UNC and Duke facing each other in the Sweet 16. It's like, oh, yes, that was not intentional. It just so happened that that's the way the dominoes fell. It's like, no, Duke was going to face or had the potential to face Baylor and Jeremy Roach in the second round, and now Caleb Love in the Sweet 16. You know what you're doing.
I've got a few points about Duke. I think that it would be a shock if the Blue Devils didn't make the Final Four. That's not to look past Arizona. That's not to look past in the next round if Duke advances to the Elite Eight, where the Blue Devils would play either Alabama or BYU. Duke will know its opponent going into the nightcap against Arizona because the Alabama-BYU game will be played just before Duke and Arizona tip off. So a little bit of scoreboard watching, but we'll know what that matchup would be in the Elite Eight in advance. But I think that this is Duke's best team under Jon Scheyer. I don't think that's a hyperbole. And I was going back, Lewis, I think this is the best Duke team since they last won a championship in 2015.
I mean, I think it's the best Duke team since the early 2000s, 2001, 2002, that type time frame. I've had a lot of people, just talking, just kind of talking sports, all that stuff. They'll come up to me and they'll be like, I feel like, maybe Baylor could get them. Baylor could really prove them some problems here. And I'm like, no, I agree, just based on paper, based on the way this Duke team is formed, based on the way the players are playing, the way all of that, this team should get to the Final Four. Obviously Arizona can match up against them very well. Of all the teams remaining, Arizona might be one of the better matchups to face Duke. And whoever comes out of the other part of the East region, Alabama or BYU, because of the pace of play, because of just how they are on offense, that could also create some very interesting conundrums for the Duke team to fight through. But Duke is the best team remaining. I know they're not the number 1 overall seed. They are the best team remaining. And so can they get to the Final Four? And you do that. Jon Scheyer becomes the second ACC coach now to be able to get to the Final Four. Currently, the active coaches, Hubert Davis did that. So yeah, it's going to be really fun to see how this unfolds over the next week, because I think we could be seeing some history with this Duke team.
I want to bring it back to the ACC here in just a second, but if Duke beats Arizona, I'd imagine it would be Alabama. Alabama is the 2 seed in the East region. And you mentioned the pace of play under head coach Nate Oakes. And this is not to look past Arizona on Thursday night, but against Alabama and the styles of play, Alabama plays almost like those old Mike D'Antoni Suns teams or those old Mike D'Antoni Houston Rockets teams where it's like, we're going to try to win a shootout and it's going to be like 155 to 151. It works to an extent, but against the best of the best, it doesn't. Unless somehow a team got really, really hot, I think this Duke team is just too talented and the defense is too talented. And that brings me to my next point, though, Lewis. Duke entered the NCAA tournament with a 31-3 record, and they hadn't played a ranked team since early December. They smoked their opponents this year by and large in the ACC. And they're entering this game 33-3, the lone ACC school left in the NCAA tournament. If we gave John Shire and the players truth serum and asked them being like, were you guys at all like Cooper Flagg gets his due and his recognition, and rightfully so. First team All-ACC. The fact that Duke didn't have a single other player on the ACC All-First team was wrong in retrospect. And I know Con Knipple showed it in the ACC tournament filling in for an injured Cooper Flagg. Tyrese Proctor, we'll get to him in a second, has shot the lights out through the first 2 games of the tournament and is playing with supreme confidence. I'm wondering if that motivated Duke a little bit to say, yes, Cooper Flagg is part of what our show is, but is not the totality of the Duke Blue Devils men's basketball team this season.
I don't think it did. I don't think it served as a motivating factor, and let me tell you why. This Duke team, I've covered them all year, and the conversations with the players it's very much like they view themselves as pieces of the puzzle. I think prime examples of that are Sion James and Mason Gillis, the 2 grad transfers that left their respective places to come to Duke out of the transfer portal. So Tulane for Sion James and Purdue, who, if you remember, made it to the national championship game last year for Mason Gillis. And, they've really bought into the role. For Gillis, that's coming off the bench, helping provide defense, being someone who can make it from the outside, stretch the floor. And for Sion James, it's being the glue, it's being the connector in that starting lineup, helping to find all kinds of players, whether it be passing, rebounding, tough shots, things like that. This Duke team has a very different feel to it than Duke teams I've covered before. It just feels very on a mission, if that makes sense. So what will that result in a national championship? They call it March Madness for a reason. Who knows? But I really feel like this Duke team has eyes on the prize. I don't think they're getting caught up in things. Con Knipple was my first team All-ACC. I just want to point that out. But the Tyrese Proctor, is he playing amazing over these past couple of games? He is, but he really caught on here in the latter part of the season. So they are very much the sum. The parts are very good, but the sum of the parts for Duke is even better.
I would have put Knipple on the first team. Proctor, who is on the 3rd team, I might have moved him up to the 2nd team. Kamen Malawach, who is on honorable mention. It's just like this team lost 3 games during the regular season. I think they should have had more than 1 player on the ACC All-First team. That is just my opinion. Let's take a quick break. We're talking about Proctor. Back-to-back games in the NCAA tournament with 5+ threes. First Duke player to do that in the tournament since his head coach, John Shire. I mean, shooting the lights out, Lewis. I've got the stats right here, and it's incredible. And the cool thing, too, and we can get to the stats, but his mom told him if they advance to the Sweet 16 that she would travel from Australia to come see the game. So it's going to be in Newark, New Jersey. And to be able to see that's going to be really cool. We knew Flagg was going to go pro. We knew Malawach and Knipple are projected to be first-round talents. I think Proctor's making the case to say, hey, I'm pretty good too, and I've got a future in the NBA as well. You have those 4 players, and they're just supremely, supremely talented. But Proctor just shooting the absolute lights out right now, Lewis, going into this game. And it's that leadership. You always talk about, well, the guard play when it comes to the NCAA tournament. He's got that on full display for Duke right now.
Yeah, Tyrese Proctor is such an interesting case in the current landscape of college basketball because he's someone who's an incredibly talented freshman coming in and has had ups and downs. He's dealt with injuries, ankle injuries and things like that over the past few years. It's been a little bit of a roller coaster for him and Duke over the past couple of years. They've had some highs, they've had some lows. And after the Baylor game on Sunday, John Shire got emotional talking about Tyrese Proctor and how much, he meant to him in the growth that he's seen from him. Tyrese Proctor is one of those players that I give a lot of kudos to and a lot of credit to for his growth on the court and just how as a person he's matured over the past 3 years, his time at Duke. And Australia, every for those who haven't been able to go to games, the Cameron Crazies always hold up an Australian flag whenever Tyrese Proctor starts doing stuff. So you have to imagine if these past couple of games were in Cameron, you'd see a lot of Australian flags getting waved around after the way he's been playing.
44 points in the last 2 games to team high in both of the first and second round games for Duke. 7 assists, only 1 turnover, 13 of 16 from 3, and then 15 of 19 from the field. So shooting about just as like I look at those stats, it's pretty good for Tyrese Proctor. It's pretty good for him. I got one more thing for you, Lewis, before we wrap up here. Do you think either Thursday night or if Duke wins, they'd play again on Saturday? Do you think we see the victory cigar, Spencer Hubbard for Duke, 5'8"? And let me say this too, scored a bucket in the tournament. Duke is 27-0 in games that he plays. Do you think we see him either Thursday or Saturday for Duke?
Well, they're 27-0 because when he comes into the game is over at that point.
Okay.
But
right.
I don't know. These are 2 really good teams they could potentially face. One thing I will say, because we're working on a story right now on Spencer Hubbard. A lot of people with Spencer Hubbard, the walk-on, I think see that he is significantly shorter. He's the shortest person on the tallest team in the country. And I think they discredit that. Spencer Hubbard, you talk to the players in the locker room, and so many of them give credit to Spencer Hubbard for making their game better. Offensively, he's one of the better, kind of end of the bench offensive players you're going to see. Like, he scores consistently when he comes in, like you said. So a lot of Tyrese Proctor, we were just talking about him. He credits as the work that Spencer Hubbard has done with him in practice as reasons why his defense has gotten better. So Spencer Hubbard, I think, is a really fun story. And one of these really great stories that you see during March Madness, a player who was a practice player and then a walk-on and has earned a scholarship. And so, I don't know. Spencer Hubbard's one of those exciting pieces. And I know if Spencer Hubbard, if there's a situation where Duke continues this run and they get to like a Final Four or something like that, and Spencer Hubbard gets minutes, every Duke fan in that stadium will lose their absolute minds. In my opinion, the 2 loudest moments I heard Cameron indoor this year were Duke's or Cooper Flag's dunk on Pitt, the one that's on the Gatorade commercial now, and B, every time Spencer Hubbard got in the game. Those are the 2 loudest moments in Cameron indoor this year.
Amazing perspective from Luis Fernandez on the baseline. And I mean, they were going nuts this past weekend in Raleigh as well. That second round game, because he got a bucket in the first game. In the second game, the fans wanted him to shoot at the end, and he took the shot clock violation, and there was like 1 second left and the game was over. But
he's a bucket. Spencer Hubbard is a bucket.
You put it in the hoop. He's Luis Fernandez. I'm Mark Bergin. Remember, you mentioned Duke, UNC in the women's. We also got NC State advancing to the Sweet 16 in the women's basketball tournament. So we've got a lot here on WRAL TV, WRAL.com, WRALsportsfan.com as well. Lewis, anything else you need to tease before we wrap here?
No, just stay tuned. We'll be in Newark, New Jersey for coverage throughout the week from Duke's run to a potential Final Four. And WRL will also have coverage from Birmingham, Alabama for that UNC Duke game as well. Don't forget on the women's side, and don't forget NC State, LSU in Spokane, Washington. That's going to be a really fun matchup. There are 32. I keep on doing this every round. There are 32 Division I men's and women's basketball teams still in the NCAA tournament. 4 of them are from the Triangle, for some perspective.
Thank you to Luis Fernandez. If you've listened to this podcast on WRAL.com or the WRAL app, you can also find it in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Follow the show so you don't miss an episode. I'm Mark Bergin. Thank you for listening.